we can transition to the Tesla Semi event that I went to. You actually were in class with what's his name? The guy who
Dan Priestley.
Dan
Yeah.
Priestley. And my understanding, I talked to the other Tesla engineers, and they said that Dan Priestley is in charge of the Tesla Semi program.
Yeah, he has been for a couple of years. I think I was never particularly close with him, but I think like I even went to middle school with him. I think
Wow.
he's like just this guy I knew all grown up, and we were never particularly close or anything. But I had a bunch of classes with him, and it was just like random that all of a sudden he's like leading Tesla Semi. So not random. I mean, he's obviously incredibly smart, very capable. But yeah, just a random thing that I went to high school with with the lead of the Tesla Semi project.
Yeah, that's incredible. That's such a small world. And you said he was like super smart and like hit the books hard, and you were like, this guy's too smart for me kind of thing or something.
Yeah, well, I was just an idiot in high school, like I didn't really care about my grades or anything like that. I kind of realized I needed to in college, but I was just kind of like a goofball. And he was like super smart, hardcore. He was on like the swim team, like took it very seriously. So he's just like my impression looking back on him was just like he was really driven. And I remember just being surprised. Like, so in Michigan where I was, like pretty much everybody went to the state schools. A couple people would go to like Chicago, and he went to Stanford. And I was like, oh, who's this big shot going to Stanford? Like, you think you're so smart? Like, but like, no, he just like, he was that smart, and good for him to be doing that. So yeah, no, it's just so cool that he's actually doing that.
That is cool. Yeah, he did a great job presenting. He clearly understands the the product, designing it. And I think one little Easter egg that came out of the presentation was that the Cybertrucks will have the capability to charge at that same speed as the semi truck. I mean, what are your estimates? I mean, given your energy, knowledge, and everything, what are your estimates? Like a Cybertruck could be close to empty. How much time do you think it could be close to full if it has like 80 or 100 kilowatt, let's say 120 kilowatt battery pack or something?
I mean, the kind of theoretical math, at 100 kilowatt hour pack, if you're charging at 1 megawatt, you just divide the 100 kilowatt hours by 1 megawatt, and you get 6 minutes.
Wow,
but
6 minutes! Oh my gosh,
crazy. But obviously, that's not going to be the real time, because in the real world, like there's the whole charging curve, and it's not going to be like you get that peak rate for, I don't know, 30% of the charging curve or something like that. So maybe the actual number is more like 15, 20 minutes, but then maybe the 10 to 60% charge is in 6 minutes,
5
or something
minutes.
like that.
Yeah. That's still great. It's 60% is pretty crazy. Yeah.
But I also don't know that if I believe that they're going to do that. And there's probably two main reasons why I'm skeptical. One is just that, like, I don't know that the cells can actually handle that charge rate. Like a 1 megawatt, putting that into a small pack, like that's a huge amount of output. So like I trust Tesla that they've figured this out, and you could probably, like, I would imagine if they designed the pack such that it splits into like 4 different sections that can each charge at 250 kilowatts. So there's probably some way they could do that. But the bigger potential issue in my mind, and maybe it's not if they adjust throughput enough, but utility rates have what's called a capacity charge. And so if you're drawing a megawatt instead of 250 kilowatts, you actually have to pay a lot more just for that standby service charge on your electricity, and like potentially a lot more. So it would actually increase the charging cost for Tesla, at least if they're paying utility rates, by a bit. But that, like I was trying to say, that could be offset somewhat if you're able to just use like half the number of stalls that you otherwise might. So maybe your actual total kind of like site-wide capacity charge wouldn't change too much. So there's a lot of different like nuances about it, but it's there are some potential downsides, I think, if they were to actually try to draw a whole megawatt, which is just crazy. I was not expecting that.
Yeah, that's nuts. So we'll get more information in time. I mean, the Cybertruck, I speculate the Cybertruck first deliveries will be in May, June, or July. June is my guesstimate, if I have to guess when. June. Yeah, they'll be the
So
first deliveries. That's my guesstimate.
I did hear from a source who wishes to remain anonymous that Tesla just announced it, or not announced, but pushed their suppliers to back about 4 months
Hmm.
on the launch of
Cybertruck.
that project, the Project Everest, I think they're calling it. Um, but I think they were initially targeting like mid next year. So
Okay.
my sense is it's going to be late next year, which I think is actually consistent with what they've said publicly.
Yeah.
First deliveries by late 23. So to me, that's kind of what I'm thinking. Maybe they get
Do
some
you
like in
think that
November or
they could
something like
still
that.
do their first deliveries in June, but the suppliers, the ramp up, they're just pushing back 4 months? Like, I mean, all they need is deliver like 100 in June or 10 in June,
Yeah.
100 in July. Instead of ramping up quickly, they're planning to ramp up slower, and that's why they push the suppliers back 4 months, do you think? Or do you think that's possible?
It's possible. Yeah. I mean, I don't have enough information to know like what the bottlenecks are. And I mean, if
Yeah.
there's some like major reason why they can't, do any um, deliveries, then yeah, maybe uh, first deliveries would be this time next year. But I mean, I think it's going to follow a similar kind of S curve
Yeah.
that the other products and factories have seen. Maybe slightly slower even because it's such a new technology.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I mean, I think that for purposes of like Tesla's financials, I think it's going to be pretty minimal deliveries next year, no matter how you look at it.
Yeah. So, China, the next thing I guess is we want to talk
Hey,
about is the
sorry,
China
but
stuff.
before we move on to that, I'm curious. Like, having actually been at the event in person, was there anything that kind of came across while you were there or at the event that maybe those of us who were watching online didn't see, or any interesting takeaways or anecdotes you had?
Yeah, interesting takeaway in terms of economics for modeling Tesla's revenues from semi, I guess going forward is that they don't have a definitive pricing for the semi truck. Like they don't have a transparent
Hmm.
pricing for their customers at this time. It seems to be um, that it will be based on customer, like maybe fleet sales. Like if they sell 1,000 of these semi trucks to some PepsiCo versus 20 of them to Walmart or whatever. Like the bigger the sale, the lower the average price, kind of thing. It seems like they're going to go that route with pricing the semi trucks. That's my feel. That's from talking to some people there. That's sort of what I inferred. Um, so that's interesting to keep in mind for if and when we try to model out the average price and the customers that are going to first and so forth. And the
It's
other, yep,
I was just gonna say it's gonna be interesting even on like the production and delivery report that we see next month. Like, are they gonna have a semi line? Like, I
yeah,
think they probably will.
yeah, they probably will. That's true. Or they might wait until the next quarter and just say it was like, not enough to
Yeah.
mention something. The other thing I gathered is the share buyback. I asked about that to some people, and everyone's tight-lipped. But I asked like questions, actually, trying to get like answers, you know, uh, or non-answers to give me information, basically. And
Hmm.
so what I gathered or what I inferred is that Elon is totally okay with totally a green light for the share buyback, but that the board has not given it the green light yet, and over 50% of the board has to green light it. That's what I inferred, and that not like majority, not like a super majority or something, just over half the board, and that perhaps the reason is that institutional investors there's kind of a contingent of institutional investors pushing back against the share buyback, in the ears of some of the board, probably saying like, This is crazy. Don't do a share buyback. About to have a global recession. We need all the capital we can get." That kind of discussion. So,
Hmm.
there are some institutional investors, trying to hold Tesla back from doing a share buyback, which is, I think, causing the board to hesitate. So that's what I gathered. Yeah,
Yeah. Interesting.
yeah.
It's yeah, and I saw the picture of you went with your friend Andrew, and he was actually literally kicking the tires. I thought it was so cool they like didn't have it roped off. Like they actually let you go up and see the semi. That was
Yeah, yeah.
pretty interesting.
Yeah, that semi was being shown, before Elon went on stage. There was, like, a long line of, like, 50 plus people by the time we got to that part of this tour, and, we waited in that line for a while, but only, like, you know, they were only, like, each person that they were going to show it to, they only showed, like, one person at a time, and the person would take, like, anywhere from, like, 30 seconds to like 5 minutes or something.
Oh,
Some of them
geez.
like look at everything and take like one guy or a couple guys were taking pictures and put it on Twitter. You're not supposed to do that, but I guess they overlooked it there or whatever. But yeah, I mean, people were taking a long time to look at it. So the line only moved up very marginally in like 15 or 20 minutes of waiting there. So we just decided because Elon was going to be speaking in 20 minutes. So we decided just to go up to the stage and kind of get a good
Yeah.
spot to watch Elon. And I don't know if you noticed, but on the live stream, I showed my wife this part, but if you go to the live stream, anyone who's like really curious, you go to the live stream of the recorded live stream of the Elon thing. I'm in the front right corner of the stage, like against the fence or whatever. Um, but right when it starts, right when it changes camera angle, right when everyone quiets down, I say, "Looking good, Elon!" like really loud, and you can hear that. And he stops and looks at me, and then he goes to start his presentation. Like he looked at me the instant before he started his presentation. You can hear me say that very in the background, and he looks because I'm trying to like
That's
encourage
funny.
him, give him positive feedback for being healthy because he was looking pretty good.
Yeah,
I felt so. It was cool that I got one shout out that he kind of heard.
that's
Yeah.
nice. Don't doubt your vibe, Elon.
Yeah. Yeah. So that was funny.
Oh,
Anyway, yeah, it was really cool. Yeah. I mean, there was lots of things. He was behind the scenes there, shaking hands with JB Strawball and
that
JB
was
Strawball
a
was there.
great picture of him with JB and Franz.
Yeah. The
It
three of
was
them
cool
were
seeing them
talking.
all together.
Yeah, and then Elon came out and shook hands to everyone in the crowd at one point, which I was like, I don't know, it's a little dangerous. Security people were all like nervous watching, like what's going on, you know? And
Yeah.
he shook probably like 50 or 100 people's hands. I was like down the line. He didn't make it to me, but I don't know. I would have just shook his hand and be like, I don't know what I would even. I don't know if I'd say anything. I'd be like, don't doubt your vibe, or I don't know what I'd say. Try to say something, but yeah, it was cool. Like this is the guy who's like, he's the wealthiest person on earth, like, but that's not why he's so influential, so important. He's like the most important person in terms of the future of humanity. And you're like
Yeah.
this close to him. You're like as close as like, it was pretty cool. Just any chance I get to be in the proximity of Elon, it's pretty historic in my mind. It's like, you
Yeah.
know, so it was cool. Yeah, I had a good time.
Well, should we talk
Yeah.
China numbers a little
Yeah,
bit? I
talk
know
China.
we're
Yeah.
so yeah. There's been rumors of this production cut. I think Rob Maurer first talked about it on Friday. The rumor that the Shanghai plant was going to cut production by about 20%. Tesla China came out and said that the rumors were false, but didn't. Like, I think there's a little bit of wiggle room in there. Like they could just say, well, we're going to cut by 15%, not 20 or something like that.
Yeah.
Or maybe there's just no legitimacy at all to the rumors. So I don't know. What's your thought after having seen this play out for the last couple of days?
Well, there's already some reports that Tesla's preparing a Model 3 revamp. That's already like
Hmm.
clear. Like I forget what it's
Yeah,
called, Project Highland or something like that. I don't know, but that's clear that they're going to revamp the Model 3. And there's reports now that they're preparing the Fremont factory already for this kind of revamp, right? And so
hmm
would they prepare? Is it possible that production is going to be down for the Model 3 for a couple weeks while they prepare it for a revamp for in the second half of
yeah.
December? Is that possible? That seems entirely
Which
possible. Yeah.
in but this is where like I kind of have a little bit of sympathy with Gary Black's kind of call for PR here, because like like let's just say for argument's sake that they're going to be down for 2 weeks in December or something like that, or that production is going to be down in December 20% relative to what it would be in
Yeah.
November. Well, if that's because of demand, that's a big issue.
Yeah.
Potentially pretty big issue. But if that's because they are installing new manufacturing equipment that's going to allow for like single piece casting on the Model 3, which will enable kind of improved margins going forward, or at least lower cost of goods sold going forward, that's great news. And
Yeah.
so the fact that we don't know kind of which side of the debate that the truth lies is just a little bit frustrating as investors. But I don't
Yeah.
know. Time will tell.
Yeah. Yeah. And I see, just going back to the Dan Priestley thing, he apparently, Jay Ryan in the YouTube comments is saying Dan Priestley was swimming All-American at Stanford, and he also played defensive end at Stanford as a football walk-on. That's incredible. Wow.
Jeez.
That's pretty crazy. I mean, to me, that speaks, strongly of his discipline, if you can
Yeah.
physically discipline yourself, then mentally you have some pretty hardcore discipline too, I would imagine. So, anyway, that was just a little interesting YouTube comment. But the China numbers, sorry to sidetrack that. I just saw that, wanted to mention that as we were talking about them earlier. Yeah, the demand is the thing, right? I mean, that's what everyone's kind of worried about. Where are we on the demand curve? And China's in a huge recession at the moment, or it feels like they're in a big recession, not a depression, but like a very big recession. It seems like, because of their zero COVID lockdowns in particular, as well as inflation.
Yeah.
So you combine that, but on the flip side, um, for many years, Elon was always asked about demand with the Model S and even the Model X and the early Model 3 ramp up and the early Model Y. And for he's always been asked about it repeatedly on earnings calls or interviews, and it's always a fear, and it's never come to fruition. Like, as like and he's mentioned in the past, like, if we ever hit demand problems, there's a bunch of levers we can pull. So he's got a lot of
Hmm.
levers he can pull. They've pulled a couple of them. You can see, right? They lowered the price. They offered some insurance. It seems like some insurance, incentive. They've reintroduced some element of the referral program. So you can see him pulling different levers, and you'd think that they have more levers, such as advertising.
Hmm.
So there's lots of levers they can pull, um, to increase demand when they feel like they need to, in my mind. So I'm not as worried about the demand as other people are.
Yeah, I do. So just as you were talking, I looked up this website ev-cpo.com. It's basically like this algorithm that scrubs all the Tesla listings of available used and new vehicles worldwide. And right now, it's showing that they've got like 1,000 new Model Ys and 1,200 new Model 3s available. That is definitely a lot higher than I've ever seen before. So
Hmm.
to me, that's anecdotal evidence that I don't know that they necessarily have a demand problem, but it seems pretty clear to me that they don't have this kind of crazy record demand
Imbalance.
that imbalance that they had 6 months ago.
Yeah.
Um,
And in the US, you can also understand it because the Inflation Reduction Act is coming. And I think a lot of buyers or potential buyers are, if they're knowledgeable, are holding off until that kicks in right after the new year.
Yeah. And it looks, just in looking at these at a high level, it looks like there's more of them, or it's like roughly even between the US and Europe for the Model Y, but there's 774 new Model 3s in America and only 369 in Europe. So it very well could be the case that you've got a little bit lower demand in the United States right now.
Hmm.
But I think that like that's definitely temporary. Like, so let's just assume worst case scenario, they build up like, I don't know, 30,000 units of inventory in Q4 in the United States. Well, they'll just sell that, in Q1
Yeah. First
with
week
the
or two
tax
of
credit.
Q1.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like I don't think that's that big of a deal.
Yeah. I don't
But
think so either.
it could hurt the stock price though, because then you'll have to wait like
Yeah.
until April or whatever for the
If they
financials to come
show
through.
Yeah, if they show in the P&D report, like, production of 470,000 and sales of 420,000, that's
Oh
gonna
yeah.
hurt the stock price big time,
For
right?
sure. Yep.
Yeah.
People will, because I mean that was already a little bit of weakness in the Q3, and like that narrative really caught fire that there's demand issues, and um so yeah, I think if you have another quarter where there's that huge imbalance, which I think production will be higher than deliveries in Q4. I'm definitely expecting that. But if it's like 50,000 units, then yeah, I think that'll definitely add
Yeah.
fuel
'Cause
to the demand by.
you're adding that on to the previous quarter, which was what, 30,000 difference or something like that? I forget, but it was a difference. So you're adding there, so now you have over 2 quarters, you know,
Yeah.
the added differences there. So it just adds to that narrative that Tesla can't sell all the cars they're making anymore. So
Which is kind of hilarious, because if you look at their day sales outstanding, like the financial metric to track inventory, it's like, oh, their inventory has gone up 30% or something like that. Okay, well, they're still about 15% of what the industry average is. Like,
yeah.
GM's got an entire quarter's worth of cars out there on lots, and like nobody
Yeah.
bats an eye at that. It's so
Yeah.
funny.
Yeah, I remember back when they were producing like 20 or 25,000 Model S's a quarter, they'd be like, "Oh, we produced 23,000 Model S's and sold 20,000 of them." And the street wouldn't give them a hard time for the 15% that weren't sold. But now 15% of the production not sold is like a big freaking deal for some reason. It's like, yeah, it's a little,
Yeah.
frustrating in some ways because that's just sort of the norm, for it should be the norm really, and shouldn't be an exception. It should be so we've somehow been trained to think that Tesla production and delivery should match very closely every quarter because Tesla got so good for so
Yeah.
long at doing it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So